What's up, guys? Shawn Myszka from Explosive Edge Athletics in Edina, Minnesota, coming in regards to our fourth installment of our quick jump tips video series that we have going on YouTube here. If you missed 1 through 3, definitely check those out. We talked about a variety of topics that typically are overlooked that can immediately increase your vertical jump performance. Today we're going to talk about a fourth topic, but one that is of key utmost importance if we're to increase and optimize our jump performance. That's a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. If anyone out there has heard me present and speak before, you definitely know that I hammer home the topic of eccentrics and the importance of them. There's good reason for that. Today we're going to talk about the eccentric velocity and eccentric rate of force development and how that can impact your jump performance. Now, it's intuitively obvious that in order for us to get higher on a vertical jump, that simply all we need to do is increase the vertical velocity of our body's center of mass at the moment of takeoff. Well, in order for us to jump faster, we need to probably stretch faster. Newton told us that a whole long time ago. Sir Isaac Newton, that is, in one of his laws, said for every action there's an equal opposite reaction. And nowhere in sport is it shown more than in vertical jumping and jumping performance. A good friend of mine by the name of Jack Wardrobe, who runs verticaljumping.com, www.verticaljumping.com, once told me when I was talking to him in regards to this subject, he said, you know, Shawn, slow jumpers are low jumpers. And I've used that term and that quote over and over again since that point, because I think it definitely fits. We've all seen those exceptional jumpers that look extremely fluid and extremely reactive, kind of kangaroo-like when they're jumping. And most often, in those situations, in those circumstances, those athletes just go so quickly through their stretch phase and through their eccentric motion and action that we can't really even tell what's happening until we look at it from a slow, kind of drawn-out version of things. But there's good reason for that. It's because if we go faster through our eccentric action, and for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about when I use that terminology, eccentric action, it's essentially our entire counter movement phase. So if I'm going down and starting here with my counter movement to that point, okay, so from here or wherever you start your actual action, from here to there is our eccentric action. It's basically when we put certain muscle groups, our antagonist muscle groups, under stretch, or when our body subjects to yielding, the yielding phase of the action. So if we have greater eccentric rate of force development, so if we get to greater eccentric velocities and our time duration takes place over a quicker, more rapid action and phase, we immediately enable our muscle and tendon to store greater elastic energy, and therefore we have greater potential energy that we have to contribute to our concentric action, number one. And number two, we increase our stretch reflex potentiation. So we can place the muscles under stretch, kick in our nervous system to change the force velocity characteristics of our body and our muscles' contracted components. So essentially, it just allows us to put more power to the ground. The other flip side of this is the eccentric force velocity curve is inversely related to that of a concentric force velocity relationship. Most people know that when we are looking at the concentric muscle action, that as you increase force, meaning you would increase load in most cases, in most strength training movements, velocity inherently will go down. But on the contrary, and on the opposite end of the spectrum, an eccentric force velocity curve actually works exactly opposite of that concentric. Therefore, as we increase eccentric velocity, we actually increase eccentric force. So if we can do this, we immediately can create greater transfer from downward to upward and increase concentric rate of force development. They're all tied together, as Newton would have showed us. For every action, there's an equal opposite reaction. So before we can exert maximal force on the concentric on the way up, during our takeoff phase, we need to be able to absorb greater amounts of force. Now, what is this eccentric velocity dependent on? Well, it's dependent on a couple of different things. First off, we got to train our body to go through that quick, rapid eccentric. Many people are just slow inherently with the way that they kind of gear themselves up to jump. And that is not going to be conducive to more optimal jumping performances. A couple different ways that we can work on it, though, is we need to increase, if we're a strength power jumper at least, more often than the elastic reactive jumpers, we want to increase antagonist muscle group strength. Antagonist, mostly in the vertical jump, going to mean right here of those hamstrings. So we want to make our hamstrings be able to have greater activity greater shortening action and be able to pull us down. Okay, so if that hamstring contracts, it's going to pull the two joints closer together between our hip and our knee, and it'll create greater speed on an eccentric as we go throughout our counter movement. Okay, that's mostly in strength power jumpers. And of course, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule, of course. In elastic and reactive jumpers, we want to actually have antagonist relaxation or reciprocal inhibition. So if the reciprocal inhibition going to be the antagonist muscle group, again, opposite of the quadricep, is going to be that hamstring. And if we can teach our body, as soon as we start that counter movement, to relax in a quicker fashion, we will create greater activity here in this quadricep. And it will allow us, when we get to our knee angle that we talked about on a couple videos ago, when we get to that knee angle, to quickly stabilize, to create greater activity in that quadricep, and to turn on and go back up with in a more rapid fashion. How can we do this in training? Well, there's a couple different ways that we can do it, specifically with special physical preparation type strength training movements. And for those of you who are familiar with Explosive Edge's YouTube channel, I definitely suggest that you check out the videos that I posted in regards to a coined method called power metrics by the Dr. Mel Siff, the late Dr. Mel Siff, in the book Super Training. He talked about a number of different ways that we can increase this ability to store greater energy and put more out in regards to, say, a squat movement. And that's what I used in videos that we posted a while ago that I'm talking about. We're talking about a couple methods in particular. The first one being an active accelerated power metric, or an active accelerated eccentric based movement. Let's suggest that, or let's just kind of think about me being in a squat movement now, so I'm not necessarily going to jump, but I have a bar on my back and then a rack, and I'm just going to squat. An active accelerated eccentric is going to take advantage of that antagonist strength and get greater activity by forcing this hamstring to contract greater, so I would attempt to pull myself down in a quicker fashion, again, imagining that I have a weight on my back, and I would just pull to here and rapidly squat back up. But again, trying to make that hamstring pull you down in a more rapid fashion. Now, we wouldn't be able to use nearly the same types of loads that we would in our typical, more concentric-based strength training squat, but this will be very beneficial to increasing the ability to transfer over into our vertical jump performance. The second method that we can use is a more passive accelerated eccentric. And that passive accelerated is going to take advantage of that relaxation. So we would be here, again, imagine me squatting, I have a bar on my back, and I would pull myself down, not actively with the hamstring, but allow it to almost relax and pull myself down to that position and then back up. I know it doesn't, you can't really tell the difference between the two that I just showed you, but watch the videos that I had previously posted in regards to these two methodologies, and you'll see the difference between them. Because in this passive accelerated, you'll often have almost like a hop, where as I start to relax, my body starts to subject itself to the force of gravity, and I start to move in a quicker, more rapid fashion there, down to that bottom position. I'll sometimes go a little bit faster or a little bit past my optimal knee angle, there. And you'll notice that when I do that on those other videos where I have a bar on my back. The third way is a way that we can overspeed the eccentric through the use of a jump stretch band, or a woody band, or something like that, that you can attach to the end of the bar. These bands work the exact same way. Now keep in mind, this isn't anything like one of those TheraBands that someone would use from a rehab standpoint. These bands will store some energy, and they're going to allow us to have greater potential energy, which will carry over into greater kinetic energy. The key with this, as you hook these up to the end of the squat rack and then onto the top of the bar, and again, I have videos on Explosive Edge's YouTube channel to definitely check out. These bands will store energy just the same way that muscle and tendons do, and it'll allow us to greatly increase our concentric rate of force development as well as our reactive strength, which would be the muscle's ability to start, stop, and change direction, or to change direction out of that counter movement, which is exactly what we're talking about here. The kicker with this is I see way too many people when they put bands on the end of the bar, that, especially if they're heavier bands like these green bands, is that they have a tendency to slow down the eccentric, where they try to resist the action on the eccentric yielding phase. I wouldn't suggest doing that. You will not increase your eccentric rate of force development as greatly or as efficiently as you would is if you start to allow this band to pull yourself down once you start that hip hinge and you start your counter movement downward. So there's just a couple of different ways that we can increase our eccentric velocity, increase our eccentric rate of force development, and start to overspeed our counter movement action. If you have any questions about this, please post on this video. I'll do my best to answer them. For Shawn Myszka, Explosive Edge Athletics, our 4th installment of our Quick Jump Tips video series. I'll look for you next time, and if you haven't seen the other ones, please check them out. We'll talk to you guys again soon.